In a stunning turn of events, conservatives and Trump supporters who brought a thin blue line flag to a rally in support of the police threw it to the ground and stomped all over it in the mud before throwing the tarnished flag into the street in front of cops as they drove by. Many of these people were yelling things like F the blue and F the police. And I was really shocked to hear a conservative, a person I believe may be a Proud Boy, yelling F the police. Conservatives shocked that the police actually protected and defended Antifa when these individuals aren't rioting, aren't smashing any property, and have never done so, for the most part. There was an incident where Proud Boys burned a Black Lives Matter banner, though they alleged that it was actually the left that tore the banner down. They just destroyed it. But for the most part, Proud Boys, Patriot Prayer, and the right don't go around smashing up businesses and don't generally create a problem for local businesses and local order. These individuals, right-wing and conservative, being confronted by the police in this way for the first time was shocking to many of them. And now they're saying many of the things we've heard from the left. The police are losing what little support they had left. And boy, is this a mistake. There's no longer an argument that cops are just trying to keep us safe and have to deal with unruly crowds. When Antifa was going around destroying small businesses, I, of course, criticized Antifa for doing so. But the Proud Boys and the right-wing individuals that are out marching aren't destroying any businesses. So why are the police firing pepper balls at them? Why are they protecting Antifa? It's hard to say, other than they're just doing their job as it was, and they don't care if they're following unconstitutional laws or not. Now listen, I have no problem being critical of police when they fire impact rounds or munitions at peaceful protesters, and it's happened. I also have no criticism for police when they use crowd control measures against violent riots. The problem arises when anyone, either left or right, is being attacked or dispersed by cops when they did not do anything. Now, there's a lot of nuance here. If Antifa has a history of going around smashing things and the police move in, it's hard to know who's being honest with you. Did Antifa try and initiate some kind of conflict so the police dispersed them? When it comes to the right, you're not going to win that argument. Conservatives do not protest for the most part. And when they do, they certainly don't go around smashing things. But here we are. I want to read for you this thread, but there's so much more to this story. Longtime conservatives talking about the enforcement of psychotic lockdowns, not just in the U.S. Ezra Levant of The Rebel in Canada posted a video of Canadian police going to someone's home because they had 6 people in it, because the neighbors ratted on them. And they actually arrested one of these guys. One of the people at this house was dragged out of the home. People are screaming. And this longtime conservative and longtime defender of the police actually put out a tweet saying that he will not be supporting the police any longer. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'll read you his exact tweet. Now we're hearing from Republican Rep. Louis Gohmert that with a judge's ruling, he has no standing to sue so that the election results will be changed. He says the ruling is effectively saying the only thing conservatives should do is go out and be as violent as Antifa or Black Lives Matter. And now you can see where we're all headed. Recently, we heard the mayor of Portland condemn Antifa by name. Well, Antifa's not going anywhere. They're going to continue their riots and their violence. But now these governments and these police have made sure they have no support whatsoever. And beyond that, they made sure that conservatives will actually seek to defy them as they enforce unconstitutional edict. The police will have no support as calls for them to be defunded occur, and the police will have no support come January 6th when right-wing individuals and left-wing individuals show up. We've already seen the videos of the Boogaloo Boys shaking hands with Antifa. Is it possible now that Antifa realizes the opportunity with angry conservatives who are pointing the finger at the police, the opportunity to say, okay, you guys do your thing, and then swoop in and take advantage? Could the same be said about the right, who now says, you know what, we're not going to bother Antifa, let them do their thing. The cops aren't on our side. The right has turned on the police, and I think we can expect things to get particularly spicy. Let me go through all this news for you, though, and show you what's going on with Republicans saying maybe it's time to get as violent, saying that people are being effectively told to get violent. And I'll show you what these individuals, these right-wing individuals did with this flag. Crazy stuff. Before we get started, Head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. I got a P.O. box if you want to send me some stuff. But the best thing you can do is share this video. And boy, this one's more important than ever. To see the police lose the support of right-wing individuals, of conservatives, is one of the most shocking turns of events I have seen in these past several years. And it is the biggest indicator that we are headed towards some kind of, conflict, calamity, catastrophe. The establishment elites have almost no support at this point. Nancy Pelosi's home gets vandalized. Nobody on the right is defending Mitch McConnell anymore, for the most part. There's now reports that a bunch of senators are planning on rising up and objecting to the electoral count vote to defy Mitch McConnell because they say he's a poor leader who would not back the president. It's all breaking apart. This is going to get, spicy. But don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let me show you this thread from Ford Fisher, a journalist. He tweets, yesterday, following a pro-Trump anti-lockdown protest in Salem, Oregon, riot police fired sting balls at conservatives and Proud Boys who refused to step back while trying to confront counter-protesters. In fact, in this video, there's one guy who says, this guy fired at me as I was backing up. Amazing. That's something we hear from the left all the time. Now, listen, there's a difference between anti-fascists, antifa, I don't want to call it antifa, you go there, and rioters. And the police start firing at the crowd because they're not backing up. And then they get mad that they were fired upon. But these groups, they riot. Conservatives, the cops had no reason to do any of this. The cops could have just moved forward and that would have been the end of it. But they started firing at these people. This is crazy. Ford says, in the moments before the sting ball incident, portions of the right-wing crowd, including Proud Boys, came across a group of counter-protesters identified as Antifa and began chanting F Antifa before police stepped in between. Folks on the right got particularly agitated as two of the BLM counter-protesters made their way around the police line, one with a paintball gun and one with a firearm. What the F is going on? Asked one. Remove this man right now, he ordered cops who didn't listen. Police charged at the right-wingers as a fight seemingly broke out in the distance. Officers deployed tear gas and at least one flash grenade and made a single arrest of a right-winger toward the end of this clip. Just tell them we're Antifa and they'll give us, they'll service us, I'll put it that way, yelled the conservative, angry that one of his comrades was being arrested. Police continue to push forward against the right using sting balls and tear gas. No more backing the blue, one yelled at them. F the blue. Originally, this sweatshirt reading Back the Blue PDX with a thin blue line was brought in support of officers by the right. By the end of the rally in Salem, Oregon, they were trying to burn it. As the police dispersed, the right-wingers took turns stepping on the thin blue line flag they had originally brought to support the cops. You have been declared to be treasonists. Only one punishment for treason. F the blue. In an amazing, look at this. In this clip, you can see the man take the tarnished flag from the ground and just throw it into the street as cops drive by. What little support police actually had is fading. Now, many of you may be familiar with Michael Malice. He's been on my IRL podcast several times. He's a pretty smart dude. He's a funny guy on Twitter. He trolls a lot and people fall for it. But on my show on the IRL podcast, he said that he believes all police are criminals and he's tweeted as much. Now, Michael, I believe is, I don't want to ascribe his political beliefs. So you can check out the IRL podcast. He's been on several times. But he basically said the unconstitutional and unlawful enforcement actions taken by police or the unconstitutional and unlawful decrees by these governors are letters to Santa without men and women with badges to enforce them. Today, he tweets, it's happening. Cue the Ron Paul meme as Ezra Levant, a prominent Trump supporter and conservative, tweets, I'm sorry. This video is the tipping point for me. For 48 years, I have been pro-police, almost fanatically so. I cannot say that anymore. I know there are still good cops out there. Some are my friends. But as the violent enforcers of the lockdown, I no longer support them. Ezra is showing this video. He says there were 6 people in a house in Gatineau, Canada. A neighbor snitched. Police went in Gestapo style, assaulting citizens. So yeah, every lockdown politician who made this monstrous world and then tries to sneak away to Florida or Hawaii, F you. Interestingly, he does go on to say, I will not take out my rage against the cops because then I will wind up dead. So I will focus my rage on their bosses, the lockdown politicians, especially the cheaters like Tracy Allard and Joe Hargrave. Maybe I'm impotent. Maybe they're immune to consequence. We'll see. He goes on to say, you can join me. I'm not a fan. It's the police. They're oath breakers. Now, in Canada, I don't believe they swear an oath to the Constitution. So what made the United States so great? A Constitution. The guarantee that our rights are bestowed upon us by our Creator and not granted to us by a government. And police officers, for the most part, swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. They do. I've heard it several times from police and police families, but I actually looked it up. Yes, they do swear an oath to the Constitution. These officers are in complete violation of the Constitution. Now, there are questions about reasonable limitations and Supreme Court opinion on what constitutes violating the Constitution, but I will assure you, the lockdown edicts are not statutory law and defy the First Amendment, period. Now, there are many people for a long time who've said, doesn't matter, the Second Amendment has always been infringed. It says shall not be infringed, and there are tons of laws infringing upon it. But it is true that the Constitution we have a Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, here are the rules and limitations. Your interpretation of infringed versus the Supreme Court's, and then we follow the Supreme Court. But it is undeniable. When you have people trying to go to church, and we have a right to peaceably assemble and worship, and the police say no, that's when things get crazy. January 6th, the Proud Boys will be in D.C., incognito, they say. The Hill reports the Proud Boys will attend the Washington, D.C. rallies for Trump on January 6th incognito, with leaders of the group saying they will dress in all black to mimic the attire of anti-fascist groups and counter-protesters. Could it be that as Antifa fights with cops and conservatives no longer care to support them, and as these police seemingly defend a broken system or a system that conservatives feel is broken, and I would argue is actually broken, sure. Is it possible that you just get one mass of Antifa, even if some of them actually are Proud Boys? They don't care. Their intention is to disrupt, and they're going to be standing side by side with Antifa. Perhaps. How will Antifa know who is who? So when the fighting breaks out with the cops, I can only imagine it's one group versus one group, not two. Now, Rep. Louis Gohmert is a Republican. He said this ruling, as his lawsuit was rejected, is essentially telling people they have to be as violent as BLM or Antifa. Is it possible that's why we see the Proud Boys deciding to do something like this? Here's the story, and this ties into what's happening with this ongoing legal action and the objections. The New York Times reports federal judge dismisses election lawsuit against Pence. President Trump's congressional allies had hoped to give the vice president the power to reject electoral votes that were cast for Joseph R. Biden Jr. They say Judge Jeremy D. Kernodle of the Eastern District of Texas ruled that Republican lawmakers led by Rep. Louis Gohmert of Texas lacked the proper standing to sue Mr. Pence in the matter. The lawsuit challenged the more than century-old law that governs the Electoral College process in an attempt to expand an otherwise ceremonial role into one with the power to reject electoral votes that were cast for Mr. Biden. As the presiding officer of the Senate, Mr. Pence has the responsibility of opening and tallying envelopes sent from each state and announcing their election results when Congress meets on January 6 to certify Mr. Biden's victory. Mr. Gohmert, along with his colleagues and electors in Arizona, had hoped the lawsuit filed on Sunday could force Mr. Pence to take on an expanded role, opening the vice president up to pressure to invalidate the election results. But Judge Kernodle, who was appointed by Mr. Trump, dashed those hopes on Friday. Though Mr. Gohmert said in an interview with Newsmax that his lawyers would appeal, his decision came a day after the Justice Department asked him to reject the lawsuit. The department also argued that Mr. Gohmert did not have standing to sue Mr. Pence over performing the duties as defined by the act, but maintained that he should sue Congress, which had passed the original law. Perhaps that's the answer. And now we see Louis Gohmert's response. Now, this is a tweet from Aaron Rupar. Aaron often pulls things out of context, and he's pretty notorious for it. But he tweets, Louis Gohmert on Newsmax, quote, "But if the bottom line is the court is saying, quote, we're not going to touch this, you have no remedy. Basically, in effect, the ruling would be that you got to go to the streets and be as violent as Antifa and BLM. Gohmert says that if Congress doesn't overturn Trump's election loss, quote, it will mean the end of our republic, the end of the experiment in self-government. Maybe. But Mike Pence himself has already rejected this. From CNN, Pence asks judge to reject Gohmert lawsuit, asking the VP to interfere in the electoral college count. Sorry, you're not going to be getting what you think you're going to be getting. Mike Pence is not going to stand up and defy the system. Donald Trump, in my opinion, will not be winning any constitutional process to be president. Now, as many state attorneys general start ramping up criminal probes into Trump, I have to wonder if Donald Trump is going to choose to fight or surrender. If Trump does just eventually give up, I believe it's possible he will be arrested at the state level. Now, in the past, there were concerns as to whether he would be arrested at the federal level. So I'll clarify. I really don't see Joe Biden going after Trump in that capacity, the same as Trump didn't go after Hillary. But at the state level, you have zealots. They hate Trump. These are deep blue states, and they may very well go after him. They're trying to. If Trump leaves office, I believe they will likely go after him. Will Trump say, I've got nothing to lose and fight, or will he just give up? There are reports that the Secret Service is going to be adding detail to the presidential detail, adding individuals, agents, because of fears that some of these agents are loyal to Trump. But many have said this is not true. There's no significant changes, or they make changes like this all the time, and it's all just hype. But I'll tell you, Mike Pence is an establishment guy. He's always been, okay? He's rather quiet. He's an Indiana governor. He's an establishment guy. Trump wasn't supposed to win, but he did. And for several years, the establishment elites were quite upset by it. I want to point out something to all of you. Build back better. It's the slogan of the Great Reset. It's been pushed by many in Europe. Joe Biden has a buildbackbetter.gov, apparently. Why is a European slogan for their plan being used by an American incoming president? Well, because maybe Gohmert is correct. The experiment in self-governance has come to an end. I mean, very smart people have said that we're in danger. We're in dire straits. We had Peak Prosperity on the IRL podcast. You may be familiar with him. He's a PhD doctor. And he was telling us that our planet's being depleted. Resources are being run dry. And these elites who have caused the problems want to extract more, but need to make sure that we stop. Long story short, it seems like they want to be able to fly around the world and do whatever they want. And if we run out of resources, the only way they can do it is if they stop us from using it so they can have what's left. That's the general idea. But I think it's fair to point out that there is something wrong with everything that's been happening on this planet for quite some time in terms of rapid and expansive growth that doesn't seem to end. Now, I believe in freedom, and I think there's a very serious challenge when it comes to how you deal with individuals, their ability to live, have families, and grow and expand. And if it really was true, the planet was in trouble, as they say, in a variety of ways, not just resource depletion, but climate change, ocean acidification, etc., then you'd think these people would be the first to put their money where their mouth is. But they're not. These are the elites who claim that we have to all pitch in, we're all in this together, and then in every possible way, they lie, cheat, and steal. What did we see in COVID lockdown? We see Newsom go out to eat. Whitmer getting her hair done. Pelosi getting her hair done. Lori Lightfoot getting her hair done. Andrew Cuomo, Bill de Blasio enforcing unconstitutional edict. We're all in this together, they say. But we're not. They clearly aren't. They can do whatever they want. And then we can look at the climate change promoters. The individuals who have been the staunchest advocates for doing something about climate change. And what do? Fly around on private jets and buy beachfront property. But if the ocean levels are going to be rising, who would want beachfront property? That seems to make no sense. And therein lies the break in trust. I'd like to believe that we can all come together to help save this planet. I think it's visible in certain areas where you can see that humans have caused expanding damage to the planet in a variety of ways. But if the elites who are saying it will defy their own rules and restrictions and orders, why would anyone believe them? Worse still is the main point of this video. The fact that there are police who will break the Constitution with a smile on their face and laugh as they put the boot on your neck. Now, there's a variety of reasons they do it. I think the main reason is simply they can see the other side. They can see what it's like for people who have no jobs, whose businesses have been destroyed. And they think to themselves, I can choose to be the person with no money who's desperate, or I can choose to be essentially immune to get a paycheck and to be above the law, to boot stomp and beat individuals who have been destroyed by this and just not care. And that's why we see it all over the world. I should say throughout history. Most notably what we saw with fascists and totalitarians in the past 100 years. I'm not just going to play to World War II Germany. I mean, you look at communist China and you look at Russia. There are individuals who are in the guard, in the army, and they say, better you than me. And now we're here. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Why? Well, we have a constitution that guarantees our rights. The only problem is these police officers will absolutely stomp all over you. Just stomp all over you if it means they stay safe. And it's creepy. And it's scary. And it gets even scarier. I'd like to show you this. Assembly Bill A416, with a warning to the left and the right about what the New York State Senate is proposing. This is not law. It has not been passed. It is Assembly Bill A416, and I'm reading this to you from nysenate.gov. I am not making this up. I am showing you an actual Assembly bill that is currently in committee. It is a long way to go before it becomes law. We can see last bill status. It was introduced. It is in committee. It has not gone on the floor calendar. It has not passed the Senate and the Assembly. It has not been delivered to the governor, and has not been signed, vetoed by the governor. This bill is A416, relating to the removal of cases, contacts, and carriers of communicable diseases who are potentially dangerous to public health. To put it simply, this bill is proposing the ability of New York State to detain individuals who may or may not be dangerous to public health. May be? That's what they say. I believe they've changed some of the language, but may be. Let me read it for you. Section 1. The public health law is amended by adding a new section, 2120, to read as follows. Section 2120A. Removal and detention of cases, contacts, and carriers who are or may be a danger to public health. Other orders. 1. The provisions of this section shall be utilized in the event that the governor declares a state of health emergency due to an epidemic or any communicable disease. May be. Do you know what that means? You might not be a threat now, but we're worried you will be. Perhaps you're an individual who, went to a party and didn't wear a mask. Well, we don't know if you have the virus, but you may be a threat. You must be removed. Amazing. They say, 2, upon determining by clear and convincing evidence the health of others is or may be endangered by a case, contact, or carrier. Contact. Do you get it now? Or suspected case, contact, or carrier of a contagious disease that, in the opinion of the governor, after consultation with the commissioner, may pose an imminent and significant threat to the public health, resulting in severe morbidity or high mortality. The governor or his or her delegee, including but not limited to the commissioner or the heads of local health departments, may order the removal and or detention of such a person or of a group of such persons by issuing a single order, identifying such persons either by name or by a reasonably specific description of the individuals or group being detained. Such person or group of persons shall be detained in a medical facility or other appropriate facility or premises designated by the governor or his or her delegee, and complying with subdivision 5 of this section. A person or group removed or detained by order of the governor or his or her delegee pursuant to subdivision 2 of the section shall be detained for such a period and in such a manner as the department may direct in accordance with this section. An indeterminate amount of time. You may come into contact with someone that determines you may be a danger. We don't know, but we do have evidence that you were maskless at a large party with other people. Therefore, they are trying to pass a law to allow them to remove you. Have you been paying attention to what's been going on? New York wants the authority to remove people who may be threats to public health. And guess what? Many establishment leftists will say, but we have to stop the pandemic. We do, but at what cost? Michael Malice said, as I mentioned, there's no law too depraved that these individuals, these police officers, won't enforce. What happens when the police are told that you are a contagious carrier that must be removed? Do you think they'll question it? Do you think they'll say, we better protect this individual's constitutional rights? Or is this not the perfect reason to remove undesirables? The question I have for you and everyone, I don't care if you're left or right. The question I have is, when you read 1984, when you watched V for Vendetta or Brave New World or Fahrenheit 451, did you think that one day you would wake up and the news would just announce the authoritarian dictatorship was here? And oh no, now we must fight back? No, of course not. Of course there would be large propaganda campaigns, and of course there would be an excuse. And in this case, there actually is an emergency. COVID is serious. A lot of people have died from it. But this is certainly not the answer. Locking down innocent people's businesses and destroying them over a year is not the answer. I know I mentioned earlier on, there are serious problems occurring on this planet. But do we trust the despots who would seek powers, totalitarian powers, to remove you on flimsy evidence? Do you trust those people? No, I don't. This is not the answer. And this is how scary things are going to be getting. Now, as I stated, this is just in committee. It hasn't gone anywhere, and it very well may fall. But the only way we stop things like this is by calling them out and catching them early. Otherwise, I'll warn you, conservatives, those who live in upstate New York and who live in western New York and northwestern New York. So if this passes, it's only a matter of time before someone who doesn't like you, a politician, says, oh, that guy, yeah, he's sick, go arrest him. And then you'll see it. We're dangerously close, my friends. Chris Hahn, let's see, who is this? He's got a viral tweet, 25,000 retweets. The aggressive progressive radio host as seen on TV. He said, any member of the House of Representatives that votes against accepting the election results from their home state, the very same process that elected them, should not be seated in the 117th Congress. Seditious GOP, RT if you agree. Where do we go from here? When you have New York violating people's constitutional rights, as confirmed by the Supreme Court opinion on what they've done, setting up checkpoints and destroying people's businesses, all to slow the spread, say the authoritarian desperates, the bootlickers on the left. Where do we go when the left says don't seat the House of Representatives that are using their constitutional authority under Article 2 of the Constitution to challenge the election results? They say don't seat them. I say, fine. Perhaps the peaceful divorce is the only way out of this. If New York, California, and Illinois are so scared of the virus, by all means, let these states have their lockdowns. And it is incumbent upon you to get out while you can. After hearing what New York is proposing, if you choose to stay and they do come and detain you, whose fault is it? I mean it. Some might say, Tim, I can't move. I can't afford it. I didn't say life was easy. A lot of people might say, Tim, you're lucky. You're well off. I was homeless several times in my life, and I chose to leave, and I slept outside on numerous occasions or lived in a car briefly. I chose to get out and find a better path, and it isn't easy. And I know I was young. I didn't have a family. But if you are sitting there in New York right now and you are watching what they are proposing and seeing what's going on, and you say, I'm just going to stick around. Okay. Not to use an old cliche, but there were a lot of people in Germany in World War II who saw the signs and got out while they could. I don't know where you can go at this point. The whole planet is getting locked up. But it's, at the very least, you can get away from places like New York, California, where the lockdowns have become psychotically draconian and where they're now proposing to detain you if you may be a threat due to contact. Think about it. That bill being proposed, it could mean that a mailman came to your house and dropped off a box. Oh, that mailman got sick, so we need to detain you because you might get sick too. Don't give them an unconstitutional reason. Don't give them a reason at all to do this. But it's going to happen soon. What do? I don't think Donald Trump is going to be able to win because it's not just Donald Trump. It's the whole machine he's fighting against, and I don't believe he has the support or the power to do so. But I'll tell you, when you see European leaders all saying build back better over and over again, and then Joe Biden steps up and repeats them, and you get a .gov using a European slogan for the Great Reset or whatever their plan is, you have to wonder what's really going on in this country. Maybe it's too late. I don't know for sure. I don't know what people are going to do, but I know that the right is pushing back on police and the system is at risk. System's probably already broken, but I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast News. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I guess we'll just see what happens in 4 days. Adios.